It's all systems go for the easing of lockdown in England. In just a week's time, we'll be back to this, heading to the shops, enjoying a drink in a pub garden and having that long-awaited haircut.
We set out our roadmap and we're sticking in it. And I want to stress that we see nothing in the present data that makes us think that we will have to deviate from that roadmap.
The Prime Minister also announced that everyone in England will be offered twice-weekly at-home COVID tests. Critics, though, say it's a waste of money. Plus, green means go for foreign holidays. There will be a new traffic light system for possible travel abroad, but don't book yet. And in Scotland, people have been celebrating their bank holiday as hairdressers and homeware shops open up again.
This is ITV News with Kylie Pentelow.
Good evening. The Prime Minister tonight gave the go-ahead for a major easing of lockdown restrictions in England from next Monday. He said he'll be one of the many people having a pint in a pub garden. And he confirmed that shops, gyms, zoos and hairdressers will all reopen. Mr Johnson also laid out the steps he said would be needed to keep us out of lockdown, including mass testing and the possible use of vaccine passports to visit some domestic destinations. Our first report tonight is from our political reporter, Shihab Khan.
We are all longing to get back to doing things that were once part of our daily routine, whether that's going for a drink, having a meal out, doing some exercise, or even getting that long-awaited haircut. Today, the Prime Minister told us that we are now one step closer to that happening again.
We set out our roadmap and we're sticking in it. And I want to stress that we see nothing in the present data that makes us think that we will have to deviate. And on Monday the 12th, I will be going to the pub myself and cautiously but irreversibly raising a pint of beer.
As restrictions are lifted to avoid going back into lockdown, the government is reviewing the use of COVID passports, which might be needed for a range of activities.
You can give reassurance to others if you go to a big mass event. Number one is your immunity. So if you've had the virus before in the last, or certainly in the last 6 months, you'll have the antibodies. Number two, obviously, is vaccination status. But number three is testing.
And that will remain a key part of the government's plans to avoid a spike in cases. From later this week, a new scheme will be launched where everyone in England will have access to 2 rapid coronavirus tests every 7 days. How much compliance do you need for that to actually work? And how can you be confident that it will work, given that compliance levels of test, trace and isolate was so low?
Lateral flow tests are effective at picking up people who are infectious. They're not 100% effective, so a negative doesn't mean you absolutely haven't got it, but a positive is useful to identify those people who then need to isolate. And you're right that testing alone isn't what matters. It matters if you're positive, and it's a true positive, you isolate.
But experts are urging some caution on those proposals.
It's terribly, terribly hard to test oneself. The temptation is not to do it properly, not because we're bad people, but because it hurts. So there's a tendency to underestimate. There also might be a tendency, to do it less if you think that might end up with you being, laid off work or unable to go to work. More testing is better than less testing. But let's not, deceive ourselves into thinking that it's anything that it's not.
As the government continues to take us out of lockdown, finding the balance between easing restrictions and keeping us safe remains the challenge. Shihab Khan, ITV News.
So by this time next week, many leisure and hospitality destinations across England will be open to customers again. Well, Paul Davis has spent the day speaking to business owners in Essex, looking forward to welcoming people back after months of closure.
Looking forward to some more human company? Well, keepers at Colchester Zoo say many of their animals have actually missed the visitors. But there are more pressing reasons to welcome next Monday's reopening. The cost of looking after the zoo park and its residents continued while revenue dried up. Now, with reserve funds exhausted, Next Monday can't come a moment too soon.
The savings don't last forever, and if we don't start seeing visitors through the gate soon, we would have been in trouble. So this is really the point where we needed to open, and we're just really disappointed we couldn't open for Easter to see a bit more income. But the fact that we've got a date is enough to start with.
In Colchester town centre, Michelle Loriger is also relieved to hear confirmation that 1 week today she can welcome clients back to her hairdressing business after a lockdown closure that's been more than just a financial struggle.
Mentally, I don't think I could do another one. This one's been really tough. I think last year when the sun was shining, everybody was okay, but this time when it's cold and everybody's just indoors, it's been really, really tough.
You don't have to go far, though, to find businesses who believe the government's roadmap has left them behind. With just 6 outside tables, the landlord of Ye Old Albion at Rowhedge Wharf says reopening under current rules is just not viable.
If you get 12 people sitting here, 6 couples for instance, then the sums just don't add up. If they have 2 drinks an hour, you know, the sums don't add up for putting on the staff, paying our mortgage, paying our bills and everything else. They just seriously don't add up.
For many, though, an important step towards brighter days is just a week away. The holiday park on Mersey Island was eerily quiet today, but not for much longer.
Oh, it's going to feel fantastic, you know. When you see people arrive, they arrive with smiles on their faces, and that's really what we're here for.
And the overriding hope is that when these signs get changed next week, they'll never be needed again. Paul Davis, ITV News, Colchester.
There were also some details today about how foreign travel might work in the coming months. A traffic light system will be used to label destinations as green, amber or red, with different rules on visiting applied to each. But we don't yet know where or when we'll be able to go on holiday. Here's Martha Fairley.
Many people may be dreaming of a summer holiday in the sun, but the picture is still unclear on when we can travel abroad. Anyone hoping for confirmation they'd be able to get away soon, told by the Prime Minister he can't yet say if non-essential travel will resume on the 17th of May.
We're hopeful, but I do not wish to give hostages to fortune or to underestimate the difficulties that we're seeing in some of the destination countries that people might want to go to. I wish I could give you more on that.
So we haven't really heard.
Disappointment for Shirley and Richard Avery, left in limbo over plans for a trip to Spain in May.
Our flights are booked, so I can't cancel or change them or do anything as yet. So we'll just sit and wait again.
Tight again.
Yeah.
When travel does resume, the government's planning to introduce a so-called traffic light system. Travellers arriving in the UK from countries rated green will not be required to isolate, although pre-departure and post-arrival tests will be needed. For countries classed as amber or red, the restrictions will remain as they are, with arrivals required to isolate or enter quarantine. But the travel industry says it needs advance warning of changes to avoid a repeat of last year's cancellation chaos.
Obviously, timing's going to be key. We need to know that if the government has an idea that a destination potentially will be going amber or red, then we need that information early, not 12 hours notice.
But the last-minute rush to book a holiday abroad is yet to take off. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Well, let's speak to our political editor, Robert Peston, now. So, Robert, the Prime Minister clearly setting out his route out of lockdown. We also learnt today about what the so-called new normal might look like. Tell us more about that.
So, there were two contrasting positions. On the one hand, you had the scientists again saying we're going to be living with COVID, actually, broadly they say forever. This is just, part of the sort of ecosystem of illnesses that we're just going to have to cope with, a bit like flu. And therefore, they were broadly implying that our way of life will have to adapt over years and years and years. Now, you had the Prime Minister laying the groundwork for some of those changes. So he, talks about these COVID status certificates, or certification he prefers, which is this document, possibly an app, that we would have to show when going to a big concert or a sporting event, even possibly the pub, to show whether we've had a vaccine, whether we've had a COVID negative test recently, whether we've had COVID within the previous 6 months and therefore have antibodies. Deeply unpopular among many Tory MPs. They think it's a bit like an identity card, the sort of thing that they have hated forever. Prime Minister refusing to say that it either will happen or won't happen. He's sort of he's basically saying, if COVID remains a problem, we may have to have them. We don't yet know anything about the future of social distancing, whether we're going to have to be wearing masks into next winter, whether we're going to have to be keeping a metre or so away from people into next winter. All of that still to play for. Some of you may feel, therefore, this is all rather, unfortunate, and it'll sort of make you a bit fed up. But on the positive side, everybody at the press conference today, including the Prime Minister, continue to say that actually we are on course in terms of the COVID data to continue to unlock all the way to June 21st. The problem is we don't yet know what life will be precisely like after June the 21st. Sorry.
OK, Robert, thank you very much. Well, in Scotland, hairdressers, garden centres and homeware shops reopened today. It's been 4 months since Scots have been able to have a haircut. Many salons were fully booked ahead of today's reopening. Non-essential click and collect services were also allowed to resume ahead of a wider retail and hospitality reopening on April the 26th.
I feel really good. I'm so pleased. It's been a long time, too long.
It lifts your mood. You feel good about yourself. You have a wee spring in your step.
It's made a humongous difference to us being able to come back that couple of weeks earlier. We were meant to be 26th of April, but we managed to get a wee bit quicker. So for business, it's been phenomenal, and for the clients, it's been amazing.
On to the rest of the day's news now. And the family of a 2-week-old baby killed after his pram was hit by a car have released an emotional tribute. Kyra Morris's parents said, "We didn't get to keep you for long, but we are happy we had the chance to meet you, look after you and call you our son." Well, Ben Chapman is at the scene in Walsall Forest this evening. Ben, a horrendous incident.
Yes, this young family were simply walking along this pavement yesterday afternoon when a car mounted the curb and crushed the baby's pram against the wall. Kyron Lee Morris was just 2 weeks old. His parents had taken him out for the very first time. He suffered serious injuries, and despite the efforts of people here at the scene and in hospital, he couldn't be saved. Now, it happened just moments after a white BMW had clipped another car on this high street before then mounting the pavement and hitting the pram. Police say the driver left the scene, but shortly afterwards a 34-year-old man was arrested not far from here. He's being questioned on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. And this afternoon, Kyron's parents, who are themselves just 18, came down here to look at the many flowers and toys that have been left in memory of their son. In their tribute issued through the police, they said, "Fly high, angel. Mummy and Daddy's hearts will always ache."
Ben Chapman, thank you very much. Former Welsh Secretary Dame Cheryl Gillen has died at the age of 68 after a long illness. She was the first woman to hold the role. Boris Johnson said she was much loved on all sides of the House of Commons and will be sorely missed. Large parts of England and Scotland had snow flurries today after bathing in sunshine just 24 hours ago. Well, these were the scenes in Oldham as residents there woke up to temperatures of around 3 degrees. On to sport now, and in the Premier League, 8th place Everton are looking to improve their chances of a Champions League place next season. They're playing Crystal Palace right now at Goodison Park. They're yet to break through after a string of missed chances in the first half. And history was made today as Rebecca Welsh became the first female official to referee a men's match in the Football League. The 37-year-old, who started refereeing a decade ago, took charge of today's League Two match. between Harrogate Town and Port Vale. Well, that's all for now. I'll be back later at 10:25. Until then, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.